Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Guest today, Dom Crockett. Dom, please tell us where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Mighty Meats.
Hey, happy to be here. Dialing in from Buffalo, New York.
Awesome.
I'm the founder and CEO of Mighty Meats. We make it easy and delicious to eat organ meats.
Yeah, I saw that on the site. I mean, it's something that's been getting pretty popular in the media, and people that go on like kind of like the big podcasts, like the Rogans and stuff like that. I hear a lot of people just like how glorious like the nutritional value is to those organ parts of the animal that are kind of like, I feel like just a little weird for some people like on its face. So this is a perfect idea for someone like me, because I definitely fall into that category. But like knowing the nutritional value is something that's like definitely stood out to me. So can you tell me a little about like how you get into this space, a little about your background leading up to this, and kind of walk me up to like what was your catalyst from taking this to like an idea to a full blown brand this way?
Sure. So I'll start my story in New York City. I born and raised in Buffalo, moved to New York City to go to Parsons School of Design, got a business degree from Parsons, worked in advertising and branding, and then found my way into consulting, particularly consulting for Fortune 500 companies when they wanted to learn how to think and act like startups. So I worked at this company, and that's what we did. They would pay us to launch startups for them. And one day I was in a meeting and a VP at our company declared a great victory. We were working with a huge beer manufacturer, and they had figured out how to upcycle the barley that they were using for the beer to make barley milk. Now, I wasn't interested in drinking barley milk, but what was interesting to me was that innovation doesn't just have to be something that you come up with out of thin air based on code or something. Innovation can be going in through a supply chain and taking something that is under leveraged and repackaging it up for its full potential. So at that same time, I had been and still a health and wellness nerd. So learning about organ meats and nose to tail nutrition and carnivore diets and all of that was kind of floating around in my head. And I just had the idea or the question of what if I could do the same thing they did with that barley with organ meat? I had been trying to incorporate more organ meats in my diet. I had been eating a lot of pate, buying a lot of liver, putting a lot of butter and garlic and onions, which turned out really well. I just didn't want to be eating pate every day, all day. And so I had to figure out a way that I could get organ meats in my diet in a little bit more of a lean way. And so I went to a nose to tail butcher in Harlem, New York at the time where I lived, and I asked them to make me a blend of V1 of Mighty Meats. And I spent about 6 to 8 months kind of perfecting the recipe. And also through that time, I learned about a lot of problems actually in the kind of nose to tail small batch meat world. A couple of those problems were, it was just really hard to find. Like some days, some butchers would have livers and hearts, but they wouldn't have kidneys. Sometimes they would only have kidneys and no liver. So sourcing it was a problem. Two, the quality of the meat of my Mighty Meats that I was asking to be made would differ based upon who was working that day, how much time they had. Sometimes it would be really well blended and be really delicious. Sometimes it would be really gross and really fragmented, and like the organs would be sitting on top of the regular meat, and maybe some extra fat would be sitting on top. It looked like a layer cake, not very appetizing when you're going to make meatballs or tacos or something. So I was like, all right, well, I've got a product here that is making me feel great. I'm recovering faster from my workouts. I feel like I just feel really energized. I feel really good eating this stuff, but it's super hard to make this. And I kind of just had that question of, well, if it's hard for me, it's got to be hard for other people. And, I'll kind of pause there with the fact that I had a hunch of, I think I could do this better. And I just created a brand, Mighty Meats, and I created an Instagram and a website, and then people started sending me money. And now I'm talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And so it kind of sounds like you basically noticed two things. One was kind of the under leveraged side of traditional meat manufacturers, or like, farmers that maybe don't utilize those parts of the animal as much or maybe as they should. And then also that even if you wanted to do that, the quality control was kind of lacking in doing something like that. So that makes perfect sense. I love that story. It's such a creative angle. And I love the point you made about innovation doesn't always have to be like the new thing from scratch. Nobody's ever heard of any part of this thing before. Sometimes it's just a new way to leverage things that already exist, which I think here in 2024, I mean, that's the name of the game, is kind of like optimizing and making things more efficient, or like the new like innovations. The brand new inventions are hard to come by these days, or, even if you get close, you're going to be in like a legal battle or something. So no, that's awesome. I love that story. And so what are some of the other issues you found as far as like quality control? I mean, I could see, somebody just didn't want to take the time, or maybe they just didn't for whatever reason, just kind of like fractional things. You kind of like see the different parts, not really ground well. So what other kind of things did you find out in your journey to eventually creating this product? How did you kind of tackle those things along the way to eventually, come up with a product that was high quality and efficient?
Staying really in touch and close with my customers. As a CPG founder, your early adopters are the most priceless, valuable resource you have. They are somebody who sees your vision and understands it and believes in it enough that they're willing to pay you for it. So I really, really stayed in touch with anyone who's bought Mighty Meats, asking them like, what's some constructive feedback? Tell me about the packaging. Tell me about the branding. Tell me about the taste. I'll talk a little bit about the taste because that was a great exercise in which all entrepreneurs, I think at some point in their journey, come up against, which is what you want is not what your customers want. So what I wanted was to take these organs and give people the maximum bang for their buck. I wanted to try to jam pack as many organs as I could into this ground beef so that folks like myself who were really active in fitness and CrossFitting, bodybuilding communities could get a lot of those nutrients that they're looking for without buying pills and supplements and stuff. What I heard from my customer was that that's not what they wanted. They just wanted just enough to get them off of zero, essentially. They wanted just enough of those organs to say, all right, I checked that box. I got my 2% liver, my 2% kidney. I've got those trace minerals. People are, especially the American palate, your traditional American palate is not really checking for organ meats like that yet. So whereas I would say V1 of Mighty Meats, it started off with like 25% organs. V2, I cut it down again to like 18%. And then now we're sitting at about 14.5%. And now I'm getting the metrics from the customer that I care about that says, I can't even believe that there's organs in here. I fed it to my kids. They said nothing except, can I have seconds? And so that's when I was like, okay, I have something here. I have something that I'm cool with producing. I'm proud of producing, but more importantly, my customer likes and they're willing to buy again. Because previously I would get feedback that says, this is good, but I still had to mix it with other ground beef to kind of make it palatable. And now through the iterations, now I've got a product that I'm pretty confident you won't be able to taste the organs at all.
Yeah, and I saw that was a kind of a highlighted point on the website too, which was like that won me over for it. Because I was like, I don't know about all of this. And I saw that I was like, actually at like the 14-15%, I can see it is probably like negligible as far as like the taste that goes. So yeah, it's really interesting. And it's so true, especially, with a brand like yours, which assuming, I know you said you started on Instagram and just made a website. So I assume you're still like mostly online even to this day. It's one of the biggest advantages to being able to do that is that direct customer interaction, getting feedback. And I think people are always surprised how like willing people are to actually give feedback. If you send them an email and say like, hey, you want to do a little survey or give you 10% off or whatever, people are still, I think, a little bit more responsive to emails than I think what like traditional sentiment goes, especially, somebody who already believes in you and have bought from you and they see that come across their inbox. It might be something that stands out rather than like your other 1,000 emails you get a day, right? So that's awesome. So obviously leading up to the V3 or V4 where the product currently sits. So what kind of feedback are you getting now? Obviously you still seek out that constructive criticism even going forward to today. So what kind of things are you seeing now that you kind of feel like you got the taste right? It's almost like you can't even notice that it's there. So what other feedback have you gotten more recently that you're looking to further develop on?
Yeah, I have gotten the feedback that, mostly positive, thankfully. I just got some feedback today that the vacuum seal package kept the meat super fresh. They were able to take it out of the freezer and put it in the refrigerator, and they created like a taco bowl with it. So I'm getting positive feedback on the packaging, the taste. I did try a experiment where I was trying to see if people would be interested in buying 5-pound packs of it. What I'm learning is not so much. People would like to, if they are buying 5 pounds, they want to buy 5 individual 1-pound bags.
Gotcha.
And that's cool for me because that's one less SKU I have to do. Just keep it, sell it by pound. But with some interesting feedback I'm getting that I was most surprised by is there's actually a lot of ex-vegans and vegetarians eating Mighty Meats. And I actually wanted to kind of just in full transparency, you said that you assume that most of my business comes from direct to consumer. Actually, most of my business now is through retail.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got one retail outpost in Buffalo, New York called Farm Shop Buffalo, and they are essentially a year-round indoor farmers market where you can get local products like low pasteurized milk and sourdough bread and grass-fed butter, all that sort of stuff. And so we've been seeing a lot of traction there. And one of the feedback that I got from Kelsey, the owner, is that there's a lot of folks coming in there that their doctor has told them you're anemic, like your iron is low or your choline's low, your folate's low, and you need to figure out a way to incorporate some of these nutrient dense animal foods in your diet. And then once they find out that Mighty Meats has all of this stuff in there, including 1% thyroid, which is something I'm super proud to offer because that took me a long time to find. People are usually on board once they find that they can check all those boxes of all those organs and not taste it and continue to cook the same recipes that they're used to.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as far as getting into the retail space, I mean, that makes sense. Obviously, most CPG brands, you got to do retail at some point. It's really difficult to do just like a direct to consumer the whole time, especially something like this that needs to be cold packaged and shipped. It's obviously a challenge. So to be able to do more volume with a wholesaler, it usually makes sense somewhere along the way for sure. And so, could you tell me now, as the brand's growing, you're getting into more in retail. What's kind of the breakdown between what you're still doing with direct to consumer versus what you're doing on the wholesale side now?
So I'd say direct to consumer is like a 25-75 split, 25% direct to consumer, 75% wholesale. It kind of comes in waves, I would say, on the website. I find that, like, for instance, Dr. Mark Hyman put me in his newsletter and has been awesome, very gracious and shouting me out. Whenever he shouts me out, of course, my traffic goes up and I get like a nice spurt of people wanting it to be shipped at their home. I see in my future more direct to consumer orders as long as people are trying the product and they're tasting it and they're seeing that it's not scary. I'm seeing already people are going to the farm shop, they're buying 1 pound and then they're saying, oh, okay, I like that. I'm maybe interested in a 5 pound pack, or maybe I'm interested in shipping it to my summer house or something. So that's what I'm seeing currently.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what are you kind of planning to, obviously, you want to nurture your current wholesale deals and, still operate in the direct to consumer as well, even though it may be a less of a percentage as far as revenue is concerned. I know you mentioned Instagram before, and obviously you have the e-commerce kind of website set up. What other kind of channels do you see in trying to grow the D2C, or at least just nurture it to continue to see growth on that side as well? I mean, what kind of channels are you utilizing currently? And is there anything you want to try going forward that maybe you haven't done yet?
Well, yeah. So I'm using LinkedIn a lot, actually. I have met so many great people, from co-packers to other CPG founders to angel investors to VC investors to PE investors. LinkedIn is, if you're willing to put yourself out there and just post, I've read something, only 1% of people on LinkedIn actively post and actively put stuff out there. And I've seen a lot of success just being very consistent on there. I find it's really easy for me to post because I'm passionate about Mighty Meats. I'm passionate about cutting down on food waste. I'm passionate about feeding moms and babies that are maybe from lower socioeconomic background and they don't have access to nutrient dense food all the time. I'm passionate about honoring animals and not wasting parts of the animal that we don't want to eat because we find it icky. All of these things kind of get me out of bed. And so LinkedIn, I think, is an excellent platform for you to get up there and share what it is you think. I would think once people get over the feeling of attaching themselves to an outcome of these posts and they just set themselves up to say, I'm just going to get on here consistently and talk about my craft, I think things can happen.
Yeah, I think even with more traditional, just consumer social media probably isn't the right term, but whatever you want to call it, is because that's really what LinkedIn is, professional social media. And you're just like a regular social media. You post about your interests, you repost things that you like, and you find random people that comment on your stuff, maybe follow you because of what you post, but it's just more in leisurely sense on the other parts of social media. And I don't think people really understand that outlook, using LinkedIn is that's really where it came from and that's what it's for. Yes, it's good for trying to find a job or trying to hire somebody if you need that, but finding a community of like-minded people like you do on your typical social media, but in a more professional sense through LinkedIn is extremely valuable. And I didn't know that about that stat. That's pretty wild. Only 1% of users post regularly. I don't know what the parameters of that is, but I mean, even if it's a conservative like statistic, that's pretty wild. So I think that's a really good advice for other entrepreneurs listening. I mean, if you're not leveraging LinkedIn, it's something you should be, because especially post COVID, I mean, everybody got on LinkedIn during COVID. If you didn't optimize your profile like beforehand, everybody did during that time, because it was almost a necessity. I mean, LinkedIn has become almost a commodity if you're selling online or just doing business really of any kind. So yeah, I appreciate that insight, and that's really valuable. I think people, it's important for people to hear that for sure.
Because I mean, you've also got people on LinkedIn that have jobs, right? They have money to spend. I think it's just important for people to understand, especially as a CPG founder. Yes, you have a product, and yes, it's solving a problem, but people really want to know who you are. They want to know what you think. They want to know who's behind this brand. Otherwise, like, that's what makes it special. Otherwise, they'll just go to Whole Foods and buy another brand.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. And the transparency from like these kind of growing brands, like a lot of people that come on the podcast, like some of the people that have the most success on social media, they're posting about their everyday life, from getting out of bed in the morning to like how their business affects their everyday life, and talking about their mental health and talking about all these things. I mean, it's a big topic of conversation today, and people want to see that stuff, and they want real conversations. They don't want to be advertised to per se. So that kind of messaging is, it can be really powerful and important. And through LinkedIn is one of the best channels in 2024, in my opinion. So
especially Gen Z.
Yeah.
They are really like, anything that's an ad is like, no.
Yeah.
Because it's
more averse to that than, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all feeling it. I mean, we're being sold to all day, every day. And everyone's always asking, what's in it for me? But they're now also asking, hey, is this AI? Is this real? Are you a real person? Are you a robot? Okay, if you're a real person, prove it. And like, I think also people sometimes start to act robotic in their social media presence. Like, authentic post about you being like, hey, I really messed up this order today, and here's what I learned, and this is what's going to help other CPG founders, is going to perform way better than your like very stale, I'm pleased to announce I have just, like, if that's how you're using it, you're not going to get much out of it. I think the people who are most successful on LinkedIn are the people who use it casually, actually. And they use it kind of like not like a TikTok, but like kind of like.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that like the interaction, reposting things, like just putting your like 2 cents in commentary on something else that's maybe like somewhat related is a good way to kind of differentiate yourself with a voice through the brand. But yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you need to have like a real, like genuine voice for people to see too, not just like people aren't following you to get like the PR update about your company. Like, they're following you to learn more about the company and yourself, that you're the one that's posting. It's so true. And I think it's an underappreciated, I think, avenue to drive revenue for online brands. I mean, just because it's not like your typical, like paid ad channel, like a Google or, Facebook, or like, boosting a post on Instagram. I think there may be opportunities to do things like that through LinkedIn, but just the presence of like, business minded people, and like the willingness for people through LinkedIn to just share information and help others along the way is another just huge point of value there. So no, this is a really important, I think for people to know, and to know that someone like you is having success is leveraging something like this in such a big way, because it's so important. It really is.
I used $0 in paid advertising to ship 122 pounds of meat.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, I never paid for Google ad, Facebook ad. I just started posting things that I knew would add value to my customer, and started following people, started commenting. And it is also a little bit about being in the right place at the right time, of course, but that you're able to capitalize on those moments when you've done the preparation of the social media.
Right.
Because people are going to Google you and look up and see if you're active or not, see if you have a personality, see if you have a voice.
And it's so important too. I mean, with the regular posting, who knows who's going to come across your post? If you're looking for funding, you might come across an investor who's like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. If you come across an influencer and might just say, let me try this product, I love it. They might just post about it for free. If they're a big influencer, like, you never know who's going to come across. But if you're not putting yourself out there, you miss the luck. That's what people always say. The harder you work, the luckier you get. It's just a frequency thing. It just has to be done. So no, that's really awesome. I appreciate that. And what was the actual inception of this brand? When did you really start? Like, when was the first sale that you made, I suppose, is a good leverage of that?
Well, the first sale was an organic order from Kansas. My buddy Otto, I didn't know at the time, but now he's my buddy. But he purchased 10 pounds in Kansas. He was a bodybuilder and found us. I think he maybe found us I was tweeting about it. And that was my first order. That was in, I want to say, December 2021.
2021, got you.
Yeah, so we're looking around like 3 years and some change.
Cool. So it's been 3 years now, obviously having some success, learning a ton about being an entrepreneur, what it takes to be in the CPG space. If you go back to kind of, day one with the brand, like when you made your first sale or even before that, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, I mean, business, personal, since you really were 2 feet in with this brand, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
One is focus local first. When I got the order from Kansas, I knew I wasn't going to be very profitable on this because like, all right, yeah, I made profit, but I have to give it to FedEx because I got to ship this stuff, in a day or two. I didn't care, frankly, because I was just so excited. I mean, you'll never forget that moment where you put something up and somebody is giving you money for it. They have no idea who you are. They have no idea. You have no idea who they are, but your product solved a problem for them and they're proving it to you by giving you their credit card information or paying for it. I don't think any founder, they'll always remember that first order, So that's awesome. And that's why I went through it. But from a business perspective, it wasn't the smartest thing for me to try to ship all over the country immediately. What I would tell myself is like, all right, you got this great product. I want you to find everyone within a 10-mile radius of where you are right now who wants to buy this product. And as soon as you can find them, like you can recruit them like really easily back to back, you can find them, then we can think about opening it up. So that's definitely one. And that's why being in Buffalo, I've really kind of doubled down on that strategy. I'm hyper focusing on what are restaurants, chefs, stores here that make sense for Mighty Meats. And then after that, okay, maybe in Rochester, maybe in Albany, like just keep it local because shipping kind of took all my money. Like I gave all my profits to FedEx in those first years. So I would definitely tell myself that. And number two is I like to think of myself as like the consumer insights guy, the visionary guy. Oh, I don't do numbers. I'm not a numbers guy. And that's not true. If you are a CEO and an entrepreneur, congratulations, you are a numbers guy.
Yeah,
you may not. Yeah. That may not be how you identify, but to the IRS, that's how you identify. So the numbers are the business. And I really wish I would have just accepted that fact more and leaned into it and get really clear on your accounting, get really clear on your numbers, because I think we've been kind of blinded, especially in CPG. We've been kind of blinded by these stories around venture capital and these software companies that raise all this money to burn all this money. In CPG, you cannot do that. We do not have the delta like Instagram or Meta or Google. Software is interesting because you can sell it and you can copy and paste it pretty easily. I can't do that with beef. So
to media fulfillment is the biggest thing. I mean, you could do 10,000 sales in a snap of a finger. Yeah.
So I would have kind of told myself that, and see, this is a kind of a shadow side of social media, right? If you go on LinkedIn right now, you'll see, oversubscribed angel fund, and we're writing this $1 billion evaluation. And I mean, it can appear like there's all this money just floating around and I'll just raise money. I'll just figure it out. I now am just hyper focused on slowly but surely incubating this sustainable company, this profitable company. Mighty Meats has great margins. Like I said, like I kind of kicked us off, focus on the people who are buying my meat and really getting in touch with their habits and their beliefs and their behaviors to say like, oh, maybe I can collaborate with this birthing center, or maybe I can collaborate with this CrossFit gym, or maybe I can collaborate with this acupuncturist. Like just get in touch with your people and ask them things unrelated to your business. If I just talked to everyone about their meat and eating habits, I would miss out on the fact that there's a huge a natural birthing community in Western New York that I'm now tapped into. And you can start to have more kind of interesting and innovative like collaborations when you really get to know these customers as humans and not just people buying your product.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think it's such good advice for anybody like looking to, or maybe in the early stages of a CPG brand. I mean, if you don't start at local, you're not going to have the connection necessary to really build out these other channels that you never would have thought of before. It's so true. And it's something I hear when I ask that question from, if you're probably not surprised to hear a lot of CPG brands that come on the podcast. It's a very typical answer. It's like, you understand that CPG is a slow burn. Like your customer feedback is the most valuable thing in those stages. And in order to do that, like just start local, like do the right things, like try to like really personally reach out to like your customers at that time. It's kind of pretty much everything that you said. I think that's a big common denominator in, a lot of the really sustainable and successful CPG brands and founders that I've spoken to. So I think it's a really healthy perspective for sure. And yeah, I just want to give you an opportunity as well. If anybody listens to the pod, any maybe other business owners or by interested in partnering with you, who will know the best way to stay in touch with you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, we're Eat Mighty Meats. We're also eatmightymeats.com URL. And I'm Dom Crockett, like Davy Crockett on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Hey, well, Dom, I really appreciate your time today, brother. I really appreciate the insights. I wish you nothing but continued luck and success. Look forward to staying in touch, and let me know if I can ever be any help to you. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dom. Thanks, everybody.